Imagine a stork the size of a giraffe walking straight toward you. Its head is riding about 4 meters off the ground. Its folded wings would stretch 10 to 11 meters if it opened them, and it is not flying. It is hunting you, or something your size, on foot. That was Quetzalcoatlus, the largest flying animal we know of, and the leading theory is that this thing spent most of its time stalking small prey across the ground like a colossal long-legged bird, not soaring overhead. The most terrifying part is how slowly it would have come. Let me give you the scale first, because the numbers do not feel real until you put your own body next to them. Quetzalcoatlus northropi lived about 68 million years ago, near the very end of the Cretaceous in what is now Texas. Standing on the ground with its neck up, its skull rode roughly 4 meters in the air. That is the head height of an adult giraffe, not the length of one, the height. You would have to look almost straight up to meet its eyes. Estimates of its body mass land somewhere around 200 to 250 kilograms, about the weight of a large grizzly bear, balanced on 2 legs and built out of bone that was mostly hollow. The wingspan is where people lose the plot. For decades you would see this animal described with a wingspan of 15, even 21 meters, the size of a small airplane. Those early upper estimates came from fragmentary fossils and a lot of guesswork. The modern consensus, worked out as more material came in, puts the wingspan at around 10 to 11 meters. That is still absurd. That is wider than a school bus is long. A wandering albatross, the bird with the largest wingspan flying today, tops out around 3.5 meters. Quetzalcoatlus roughly triples it. So you have an animal as tall as a giraffe, as heavy as a bear, with wings that could shade a tennis court. And the obvious assumption, the one almost everybody makes, is that something like that ruled the sky. A monster gliding over the Cretaceous floodplains, dropping out of the clouds onto its victims. That picture is wrong, or at least the best evidence suggests it spent most of its life doing far stranger. Before we get to what it was really doing, we should clear up what this thing even was, because almost everyone gets the category wrong. Quetzalcoatlus was not a dinosaur. It was not a giant bird. It was a pterosaur, a flying reptile, a member of a completely separate branch of the reptile family tree that happened to be alive at the same time as the dinosaurs. Pterosaurs are the sister group to dinosaurs, close cousins, but not the same thing. They evolved flight on their own, tens of millions of years before the first bird ever left the ground, and they did it in a totally different way. A bird's wing is supported across the whole arm and hand. A bat's wing is stretched across long fingers. A pterosaur's wing was a membrane stretched from its body out to a single enormously elongated 4th finger. One finger held up the entire sail. Quetzalcoatlus belonged to a family of pterosaurs called azhdarchids, named after a dragon from Persian mythology. The azhdarchids were the last and the largest of all the pterosaurs, and they share a very specific and very weird body plan. Long legs, a long, stiff neck that could not curl up like a heron's, a long, toothless, spear-shaped beak. And here is the detail that broke the old soaring monster idea. That neck was reinforced, almost rigid, with vertebrae locked into a near straight line. It could not coil and strike. It could not fish like a pelican. Whatever this animal was doing with that beak, it was doing it by moving its whole body, not by whipping its head around. In 2008, paleontologists Mark Whitten and Darren Neisch published a study that re-examined what these giant azhdarchids actually did for a living. They looked at the proportions, the neck, the limbs, the feet, the beak, and the kinds of environments the fossils turn up in, which were often inland floodplains rather than coastlines. The picture they assembled is the one that has mostly held up since. Quetzalcoatlus was not primarily a soarer snatching fish from the sea. The best evidence points to a terrestrial stalker, an animal that folded its wings, walked on all fours across open ground, and hunted the way a giant stork or a ground hornbill hunts today. Picture how that worked. On the ground, a pterosaur does not waddle around on its hind legs like a bird. It walks on all fours, with the wings folded up and the elbows and wrists acting as front limbs, so the long wing finger points up and back out of the way. Quetzalcoatlus, moving across a Cretaceous mudflat, would have been striding on 4 limbs with a long, efficient gait, its head held high on that stiff neck, scanning the ground in front of it. And it was scanning for small things. The baby dinosaurs and lizards and amphibians and small mammals scurrying through the ferns, anything it could pin or grab and swallow whole, the way a stork swallows a frog or a heron swallows a fish. In one motion, head first, no chewing. That spear-shaped beak makes sense the second you stop imagining a fishing bird and start imagining a picker. The leading picture is that Quetzalcoatlus walked prey down on foot, lowered that long neck and beak to the ground, snapped up whatever it found, and tipped its head back to let the meal slide down. It did not need to be fast over short bursts. At 4 meters tall, it could see prey from a long way off, cover ground efficiently, and its sheer size meant almost nothing on the ground was a threat to it. It was, functionally, an apex predator that did its hunting at a walking pace. And that is the part that gets under your skin. A predator the size of a giraffe that does not chase, that does not pounce, that just walks toward you, closes the distance one long stride at a time, and lowers a beak the length of a person down at the end of it. There is no dramatic charge. There is just an enormous patient animal that has already decided, and the slow inevitability of it is honestly worse than any pounce. If a giant flying reptile that stalked its dinner on foot is the kind of thing you want more of, take a second to subscribe. Because the deep past is full of animals this strange. Now back to the single hardest question about Quetzalcoatlus. How does something that big get into the air at all? Because here is the catch. It absolutely could fly. The bones tell us so. They are hollow, thin-walled, braced inside, with struts like the inside of an aircraft wing, the classic skeleton of a flying